New York had a way of magnifying everything, your dreams, your failures, your loneliness. For Ethan Miller, the city had become a museum of memories he no longer wished to revisit. Every subway tunnel, every rain-soaked street in Midtown reminded him of nights when Jessica's disappointment settled on his shoulders like wet cement. He remembered the final argument with unsettling clarity, though he had spent years trying to sand down the sharp edges of the words. "You have nothing, Ethan," Jessica had said, her voice trembling with accusation rather than sadness. "No money, no ambition, no future. I'm done carrying this marriage on my back." He didn't shout. He didn't fight. He simply watched her pack. And when she slammed the door, the silence felt like confirmation of everything she had just said. 5 years later, that silence still echoed. Tonight, Ethan sat alone in the dim light of his small but tidy Brooklyn apartment, an upgrade from the shoebox he lived in during the final months of his marriage. Papers were scattered across the coffee table. Prototype diagrams, investor notes, compliance documents from the clinical trial his company had just completed. He should have felt triumphant. Only a handful of startups in the medical tech sector ever reached this stage. But triumph required space in the heart, and Ethan's heart had been cluttered for a long time. His phone vibrated. He expected another late-night message from the development team. Instead, the sender name froze him in place. Hale Family Events. He opened it slowly, half expecting it to be spam. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Jessica Hale and Aaron Whitford." The rest blurred. He sank back into the couch, the email glowing like a cruel joke. Of course Jessica wouldn't invite him. She hated reminders of her past, especially the parts she deemed failures. This had to be an accidental inclusion, some automated system pulling old contacts. Still, the sight of her name stirred a pressure deep in his chest. He read it again, as if the words might alter themselves, as if the universe might reconsider. Jessica was getting married. He knew she was dating someone wealthy. New York had a way of broadcasting those relationships loudly. But now she was marrying him, a young real estate investor whose social media presence screamed curated perfection. Charity galas, Greek island vacations, penthouse sunsets. Jessica had always wanted to climb, even when she pretended she didn't. Ethan closed the email. The room felt smaller. He stood and moved toward the window. Outside, Brooklyn shimmered under a thin veil of winter fog. Car lights bled into long strokes of color. The city looked softer than usual, as if reluctant to disturb him. His reflection in the glass showed a man who had changed. His jaw was sharper now, his posture straighter. His hair, once unruly, was neatly kept. The exhaustion in his eyes came not from defeat, but from work that mattered. At the startup Violine Health, he was no longer invisible. He was the engineer behind the company's breakthrough diagnostic device, the one investors kept asking to meet. 2 months earlier, after a grueling year, their prototype had passed regulatory review for early-stage clinical integration. It was the kind of milestone that turned struggling startups into industry disruptors. None of that erased Jessica's words, though. The city lights flickered against the window as he tried not for the first time to let go of the past. His phone rang. It was Clara Nguyen, his closest colleague and the company's chief strategist. Practical, brilliant, and perceptive in ways that sometimes unsettled him. "Still awake?" she asked. "Yeah. You?" "Reviewing the presentation for tomorrow. But Ethan, your voice sounds off. What's wrong?" He hesitated. "I got something strange in my inbox." "Strange how?" "A wedding invitation." "From who?" "Jessica." The line went quiet. Clara knew the story. She had seen the quiet ache in him long before he ever admitted the reason behind it. "Do you want to go?" she finally asked. "No," he said too quickly. I mean, it was probably a mistake. Maybe, Clara said, her voice steady. But even mistakes can show you something you need to face. Ethan exhaled slowly. He hated how much weight the email carried. I don't want to give her the satisfaction of thinking I care, he said. Do you? Clara asked gently. He didn't answer. Because the truth was messy. He didn't love Jessica anymore, not in the way love is understood. But a part of him still lived in the shadow of her last words. A part of him still wondered whether he had been the failure she claimed he was. Clara broke the silence. Closure isn't for her, Ethan. It's for you. He closed his eyes. I'll think about it, he said. After the call, he returned to the email one last time. Jessica's smiling photo beside her fiancé stared back two people glowing with confidence, bathed in the kind of affluence she always chased. Ethan deleted the email, but the weight of it remained. He didn't know yet that fate had its own way of resurfacing what people tried to bury. He didn't know that Jessica's wedding, her perfect, glittering, meticulously curated wedding, would become the moment their lives collided again. And he had no idea that his presence there, quiet and unassuming, would unravel everything she built. He only knew one thing. The past was no longer content to stay silent. The next morning, Manhattan looked like a moving collage of ambition suits rushing into glass towers, taxis carving through traffic, digital billboards screaming new beginnings and forgotten endings. Ethan walked through it all with the familiar, numb focus of someone who had trained himself to disconnect from anything that wasn't work. At Violine Health, the office carried the sterile brightness of a place built on hope whiteboards filled with formulas, coffee cups abandoned beside servers, and the quiet hum of machinery that never slept. Clara was already at her desk, her eyes glued to analytics, but she looked up the moment he arrived. You didn't sleep, she said calmly. Not much, he admitted. She didn't push. Clara never pushed. She simply observed him with the precision of someone who dealt daily with patterns and anomalies and had learned to read the subtle fractures in his expression. They moved into the conference room where the team gathered for the presentation rehearsal. Screens lit up with projections of data, heart failure detection accuracy, trial results, investor metrics. Ethan immersed himself in the technicalities, letting the numbers drown out the memory of last night's email. But halfway through the meeting, his phone lit up again. Hail family events. Subject: follow-up regarding RSVP. The breath left his lungs. He waited until after the meeting before opening it. Clara lingered by the doorway, pretending to tidy documents she had no reason to touch. The message was short. We noticed you haven't responded to the previous invitation. Kindly confirm your attendance for family reservation purposes. Family. The word hit like a stone. He hadn't been family to Jessica in years. He wasn't supposed to be on this list. Someone, somewhere had manually added his name again. Clara approached quietly. It's not a mistake anymore. He rubbed his temples. What does she want? A final ego boost? To show me what I supposedly missed out on? Or maybe, Clara said, someone in her family still thinks you matter. He flinched. That thought was even harder to process. Jessica's mother, Elaine, had once adored him. During the early years, she insisted Ethan was the steady presence Jessica needed, but things changed when Jessica began comparing their life to everyone else's curated fantasies online. By the end, even Elaine had grown distant, swept up in her daughter's hunger for status. He tossed the phone onto the table. I'm not going. Okay, Clara said. Then don't. Silence lingered. Ethan found himself staring through the conference room glass at the skyline, a sharp, glittering reminder of his past failures and present contradictions. Clara folded her arms. But you're not deleting this one. She was right. He couldn't bring himself to. That evening, Ethan took the long way home, letting the cold wind slap some clarity into him. Brooklyn Bridge shimmered under city lights, the cables stretching across the river like veins feeding life into Manhattan. He stopped midway, leaning against the railing. 5 years ago, he and Jessica had walked this same path on their third anniversary. She had been laughing that night, the genuine kind, the kind she rarely gave later on. They ate street hot dogs and talked about kids, dreams, and the tiny apartment they hoped to escape. "Someday we'll have our own place," she had said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I don't need fancy things, just us." But someday eventually turned into not enough, and their love, once warm and quiet, became a constant comparison to a world she felt she deserved. He lingered on the bridge until the cold became intrusive. When he finally reached his apartment, the darkness felt heavier. His answering machine blinked one unheard message. Few people called him outside work. He pressed play. A familiar voice crackled through the static. "Ethan, it's Elaine." He froze. Jessica's mother sounded older, wearier, nothing like the sharp and polished woman he remembered. "I hope this number is still yours. I just wanted to say if you saw the invitation, please know I meant to include you. I know Jessica didn't, but I think you should come. You were important once. Maybe you still are." A pause, a shaky breath. "Do what you feel is right, but if you're asking what I want you there." The recording ended. Ethan sat down slowly, the weight of her words pressing against old wounds. He didn't understand why she wanted him there. Closure? Guilt? A chance for Jessica to see what she lost? Or perhaps Elaine wanted to remind her daughter of the version of herself she discarded along the way. His phone buzzed again, another message. But this time, not from the Hale family. It was from Jaden, his co-founder. "Investor dinner Friday. Mandatory. Wear something less like you hate money." Ethan almost laughed. His life was so sharply divided now, public success, private wounds. He lay back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Was attending the wedding petty? Or was avoiding it a sign that Jessica's words still owned part of him? He didn't want revenge. He didn't crave spectacle. He didn't want to ruin her day. He just wanted peace with the version of himself she left behind. As he drifted toward sleep, he imagined walking into the venue, not triumphant, not superior, but whole. A man rebuilt, a man unshaken by the past. But imagination was safe. Reality was not. He closed his eyes, unaware that the next message waiting in his inbox, the one he hadn't opened yet, would push him towards a decision he wasn't prepared for. It simply read, "From Jessica, we need to talk before the wedding." The past, it seemed, refused to stay buried. Morning arrived with a dull gray sky stretched across Manhattan, neither threatening rain nor offering light. Ethan woke with a tightness in his chest, a weight pressing somewhere behind the ribs. It took several seconds before he remembered why. Jessica's message. He lay still on the couch, staring at the faint cracks in the ceiling paint. The apartment felt colder than usual, as if holding its breath around him. He finally reached for his phone. The message was short. Without greetings or polite framing, Jessica had always been direct when she wanted something. "Jessica, we need to talk before the wedding." No explanation, no apology, no context, just a demand, as if 5 years hadn't passed. He didn't respond. Instead, he showered, dressed, and headed to work, hoping the city's familiar noise would drown out the echo of her words. But the message pulsed at the back of his mind like a restless heartbeat. At Violine, the atmosphere was buzzing investor interest, potential partnerships, the excitement of a company on the brink of explosive growth. People greeted him warmly, discussions flowed around him, and screens glowed with data. But Ethan moved through it like a ghost. Clara noticed immediately. She intercepted him before he reached his office. "Talk," she said simply. He hesitated, But Clara waited arms crossed, expression neutral yet knowing. "Jessica messaged me," he said. Clara didn't react with surprise. "What did she want?" "She wants to talk. Before the wedding." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Talk about what? Closure? Regret? Some last-minute emotional purge before marrying the rich guy?" He didn't answer. Clara's tone softened. "Ethan, you don't owe her that. I know, but you're thinking about responding." He didn't deny it. Clara studied him, her gaze steady. "Just don't do anything that reopens wounds you've worked so hard to close." He nodded, though he wasn't sure it was a promise he could keep. He spent the rest of the morning reviewing documentation and preparing for upcoming investor meetings, but his mind kept drifting back to Jessica, to the version of her he once loved, and the version she became. Lunch approached. His phone buzzed again. "Jessica, I'll be at Greystone Cafe at 3 p.m. If you come, you come. If not, I won't ask again." So she had chosen the place. Greystone Cafe, small, quiet, tucked into a corner of Soho. She used to like it because no one she knew ever went there. A place where she didn't have to perform. It was unsettling that she remembered. Or maybe she chose it because she assumed he would. Ethan stood from his desk, tension running through him. He wasn't sure why he went. Curiosity? Closure? A need to prove to himself more than to her that her words no longer dictated his value? He didn't tell Clara he was leaving. He didn't have the courage to hear her say, "Don't go." The cafe door chimed softly when he entered. Greystone looked the same warm lighting, exposed brick, soft jazz humming in the background. The smell of roasted coffee and baked cinnamon clung to the air. And there, sitting by the window, was Jessica. She looked different, still polished, still beautiful, in the curated way she always strived for, but there was tension around her eyes, a subtle fissure in the perfect facade. A woman rehearsing happiness, but unable to fully hold the pose. Her eyes widened when she saw him. Surprise? Relief? Something else he couldn't name. "Ethan," she breathed, rising slightly from her chair. "You came." He nodded once. "You said you wanted to talk." She gestured for him to sit. He remained standing for a moment, studying her. She wore a cream-colored coat that draped perfectly over her silhouette, makeup flawless, hair styled in soft waves. Yet her hands trembled slightly when she reached for her cup. This wasn't the confident bride displayed across her social media. This was someone unsettled. He finally sat. "What is it, Jessica?" She exhaled, visibly struggling to find words. Her gaze dropped to the table. "I didn't know my mother invited you," she said softly. "She didn't tell me. I only found out yesterday." Ethan stayed silent. Jessica swallowed. "But I sent the second email. And the message." He felt the shift of the room around them, the low hum of voices, the clinking of dishes. "Why?" he asked. She looked up, and for the first time in years, he saw something honest flicker in her expression. "Because I needed to see you before I get married," she said. "That's not an answer." She closed her eyes briefly. "You were important to me, Ethan." "Was," he corrected. "Yes," she whispered, "but that doesn't erase the fact that you shaped years of my life. And She paused, fingers tightening around her cup. "I hurt you. Badly." The words hung in the air, sharper than he expected. He waited. Jessica continued, voice unsteady. "When I left you, I thought I was choosing a better life. Stability, security. I thought it would fix everything inside me." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "But it didn't," she said. "And now I'm about to marry someone who is everything I said I wanted. And I still feel like something is missing." Ethan stiffened. "Jessica," he said quietly, "if you're unhappy, I'm not asking you to save me." she snapped gently, cutting him off. I just need to know something. What? Are you happy now? Did you find what you were looking for? The question struck deeper than he expected. He didn't answer immediately. Jessica leaned forward, eyes pleading. I need to know I didn't ruin you. For a moment, Ethan saw the girl he once loved, the one terrified of failure, terrified of being ordinary, terrified of being judged, the one who used cruelty as a shield. He exhaled slowly. No, he said finally. You didn't ruin me. Relief washed across her face, raw, unfiltered. But you didn't break me either, he added. She froze. Ethan stood up. Whatever you're looking for, he said, you won't find it in me. Not anymore. Jessica's voice trembled. Will you come to the wedding? He paused. I haven't decided, he said. But if I do, it won't be for you. He left before she could answer. Outside, the cold wind hit him, but it felt cleansing. For the first time in years, the weight on his chest loosened. Yet he didn't notice. The figure across the street, someone who had seen him enter the cafe, someone who took a photo, someone who sent it directly to Aaron Whitford. Aaron Whitford had never been a jealous man. At least, that was the story he told himself and the story he cultivated for the world. His life was built on control, pristine suits, well-timed smiles, strategic philanthropy, curated perfection across every platform that mentioned his name. But the moment the photo arrived, a cold, unfamiliar surge shot up his spine. It came from a groomsman, his cousin Tyler, a man with too much free time and too little discretion. The message was simple. Dude, thought you should see this. Attached was a blurry image taken from across the street. Jessica sitting inside Greystone Cafe, and Ethan standing at her table. Aaron stared at it for a long time. The framing was innocent enough, no physical contact, no dramatic expressions, but something in Jessica's posture bothered him. The tilt of her head. The way her hands were clasped as if she were confessing instead of chatting. He zoomed in. Jessica's eyes were locked on Ethan in a way Aaron had never seen directed at him, earnest, unguarded, disarmed. His stomach tightened. He set the phone down carefully, as if any abrupt movement might trigger an explosion. He found Jessica back at their penthouse, seated on the floor with wedding decor samples spread around her. She looked up the moment he entered, smiling, ready to play the part she had perfected. You're home early, she said lightly. Aaron didn't smile back. Jessica's expression faltered at the same time he placed his phone onto the coffee table between them, screen up, photo displayed. Color drained from her face. Where was this? Aaron asked, voice calm in a way that made the room feel colder. Jessica's throat worked before she answered. Greystone Cafe. When? This afternoon. With your ex-husband. A pause, long, suffocating. Yes, she confessed. Aaron slowly sank into the armchair, his hands clasped tightly. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't angry the way ordinary men became angry. His silence was colder, calculated. Why? He asked. Jessica swallowed hard. I just needed to talk to him. About? Our past. Your past, he corrected sharply. She looked away. Aaron leaned forward. Jessica, tell me exactly what you needed from him. Her lips trembled. Closure. Aaron laughed once, a dry, humorless sound. Closure? 4 days before the wedding? Jessica flinched. I saw the way you were looking at him, Aaron said quietly. That wasn't closure. That was something unresolved. Jessica's eyes flickered with something like fear or guilt. Aaron, I'm marrying you. I chose you. Did you? He asked. Or did you choose the life I give you? Her breath hitched. You think I don't see it? He continued. The way you chase status, the way you need validation like oxygen. You treat life the way some people treat social media. You're always curating, always performing. Jessica's voice cracked. That's not fair. But true. Silence billowed between them. I was honest with you, Aaron said. I told you about my past, my flaws, my business failures, everything. And yet you go behind my back to meet your ex because you needed closure. Jessica's eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away. I didn't go behind your back. I was going to tell you. When? Aaron asked. After the vows? Her shoulders sagged. Aaron stood. I need time to think. Aaron, please. He walked past her, jaw set. We'll revisit the wedding plans tomorrow. When the door closed behind him, Jessica sank to the floor. She pressed her palms to her eyes, trying to stem the shaking. She wasn't in love with Ethan, not anymore. At least she thought she wasn't. But he represented something she had lost long ago, a version of herself unshaped by pressure, performance, ambition. And now that Aaron had seen the photo, everything felt as fragile as glass. Meanwhile, Ethan returned home, unaware of the firestorm he had left behind. He spent the evening drafting technical updates for an upcoming meeting, but the words blurred repeatedly. His concentration fractured. His encounter with Jessica replayed in his mind not because he still longed for her, but because her questions lingered. Are you happy now? Did you find what you were looking for? He wished the answers came easily. Around 11 p.m., his phone lit up again, this time with a call, not a message. Clara. He answered immediately. Where have you been? She asked. Home. You disappeared all afternoon. He hesitated. I met Jessica. Clara let out a slow breath. I figured. There was something in her tone concern, maybe frustration, but she didn't voice it. What did she want? Clara asked. Closure, Ethan said, or at least that's what she claimed. And you believe her? I'm not sure. Clara was quiet for a long moment. You know this won't end neatly, right? I know. Ethan, whatever happens next, just don't let her pull you back into her world. You worked too hard to get out. He closed his eyes. I'm trying. You don't owe her anything, Clara added softly. He didn't answer. Because a small part of him felt he did owe Jessica something, not love, not loyalty, but acknowledgement of what they once were. Guilt and resentment had a way of twisting those lines. Try to sleep, Clara said before hanging up. Ethan stayed awake long after the call ended. Across the river, Jessica sat alone in the dark penthouse, phone clutched in her hands. Her mother had texted again, asking whether Ethan would attend the wedding. She didn't respond. But she kept staring at Ethan's last words. If I come, it won't be for you. Those words echoed through her, until dawn broke. She didn't know it yet, but forces around her family expectations, Aaron's doubts, her own guilt were already shifting, cracking, pushing. Everything she had built was about to teeter, and Ethan's presence, whether he intended it or not, was the tremor beneath it all. Morning crept into the penthouse like an uninvited guest, cold, muted, unwilling to leave. Jessica had barely slept. She wrapped her arms around herself as she stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the city pulse below. Aaron's absence was louder than any argument. Her phone buzzed. Elaine, sweetheart, rehearsal dinner is tonight. Confirm the guest list. Did Ethan reply? Jessica didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mother's fixation on Ethan, on what he represented, felt like an open wound she didn't want reopened. She shut off her phone and sat on the sofa, feeling the silence wrap tight around her. Last night's confrontation echoed in every corner of the room. Aaron's voice, the photo, the look in his eyes. She thought she had left the past behind. But the past, it seemed, had a way of stitching itself into the present. Aaron was in his downtown office, staring at the photo again. But this time, he wasn't angry. He was evaluating. He prided himself on emotional distance, something he learned early in business. Jealousy clouded judgment. But analysis? Analysis revealed the truth. He zoomed into Ethan's posture, upright, composed, not leaning in. He zoomed into Jessica, leaning forward, hands tight, expression raw. Jessica was the variable, not Ethan. Aaron rubbed his temple. He had invested heavily in this marriage financially, socially, emotionally. Jessica was the perfect partner on paper, poised, beautiful, driven. But instability lived beneath her polished veneer, surfacing whenever the past clawed at her. The photo wasn't proof of betrayal. It was proof of unresolved weakness. And Aaron hated weakness, especially in people he relied on. His assistant knocked softly. "Mr. Whitford, the wedding planner is here. She says there are urgent updates." Aaron straightened his jacket. "Send her in." He had a wedding to control perfectly, precisely, and he would, even if he had to reshape Jessica's chaos into order himself. Across the river, Ethan stood inside the investor boardroom wearing a charcoal suit, answering questions with quiet authority. Clinical integration milestones, projected Q2 expansion, device scalability. He handled them all with calm confidence, so different from the man Jessica once dismissed. When the meeting ended, investors shook his hand with firm approval. Clara walked beside him as they stepped out. "You did well." He nodded. "Thanks." But Clara was watching him more closely than the investors had. "You're distracted," she said. He hesitated. "Last night was complicated." Clara folded her arms. "So she got to you?" "It's not that," Ethan said. "I just didn't expect the conversation to feel so familiar," Clara finished. He blinked. Clara's voice softened. "She knows which parts of you still hurt." And she pressed them. He didn't deny it. They walked in silence for a moment. Then Clara said quietly, "Ethan, if you go to that wedding, you need to decide who you're going as, the man she left behind or the man you are now." Her words sank deeper than she realized. He didn't answer. That afternoon, a storm rolled slowly over Manhattan, heavy clouds pressing down like a warning. Ethan returned to his apartment and found an envelope slipped under his door. His name written in familiar handwriting. He froze. It wasn't messy enough to belong to Jessica. It wasn't formal enough to be from the wedding staff. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet. "Ethan, if you're going to attend the wedding, please sit in row 3, seat 6. It would mean more to me than you know. Elaine." He sat heavily on the couch. Why did Elaine want him there so badly? What was she hoping to repair? What fracture in Jessica, or in herself, was she trying to mend? He leaned back, exhaling. His life had become a collision of past and present, and he wasn't sure which side he belonged on. His phone buzzed again. "Clara." He answered. "Hey." "You okay?" she asked. He let out a breath. "No." Clara hesitated before speaking. "Can I come over?" Ethan blinked. "Is something wrong at the office?" "No," she said, "but something is wrong with you." He didn't know what to say to that, but he didn't say no. 20 minutes later, Clara was in his apartment coat draped over her arm, hair slightly disheveled from the wind. She sat beside him, not too close, not too far. "You're spiraling," she said simply. Ethan rubbed his hands together. "I don't know what to do." Clara's voice remained steady. "You don't have to decide tonight." But he felt the decision hanging over him anyway. Attend the wedding and risk reopening everything. Skip it and spend the rest of his life wondering what would have happened. Clara nodded toward the letter in his hand. "Is that from her?" "From her mother." "Same problem," Clara murmured. He shot her a tired look. She held it. "Ethan, you keep saying you're over Jessica, but you're not over who you were with her." He didn't answer. She continued, softer now. And she's not over who she was with you. The apartment felt even smaller. Clara stood. Whatever you choose, just know you don't have to face any of this alone. He watched her leave, the door clicking softly behind her. He stared at the envelope on the table. Lightning cracked outside, and somewhere in the city, in a penthouse filled with rehearsed perfection, Jessica stared at her wedding gown with a growing sense of dread. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here. And none of them, Ethan, Jessica, or Aaron, had braced for what it would unleash. The rain had stopped by evening, leaving Manhattan slick and gleaming, reflections stretching like thin mirrors across the streets. Jessica stood in front of the hotel ballroom's gilded doors, smoothing the fabric of her silver rehearsal dress with trembling hands. People moved behind her, laughing, chatting, clinking glasses, but she couldn't absorb any of it. She felt hollow, as if her thoughts were trapped beneath the surface of her skin, clawing to get out. Elaine approached, elegance practiced to perfection. Her perfume jasmine and white musk wrapped around Jessica like memory. "You look pale," her mother said. "I'm fine." Elaine paused. Did Ethan respond? Jessica stiffened. He might come. He might not. Her mother sighed softly, her voice lowering. "I hope he does." Jessica turned sharply. "Why does it matter so much to you?" Elaine didn't flinch. Years of social training had ironed out her reactions into a kind of emotional porcelain. "Because," she said, "you were your best self with him." Jessica looked away. "And now?" she asked, her tone brittle. Elaine's silence was answer enough. Jessica felt the words like shards. She walked inside before her mother could say more. The ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers. Guests milled about in elegant attire, laughter swelling, champagne flowing, conversations sparkling with the confidence of the wealthy. Everything was curated. Perfect. Instagram ready. Jessica felt like a misplaced ornament in her own life. Then Aaron appeared. His suit fit him immaculately. His expression was carved from marble. She braced herself. He reached her with a controlled smile. "You look beautiful." His voice was calm, too calm. Jessica nodded. "About yesterday?" "Not here," he cut in softly. "Tonight is about presentation. Tomorrow is about decisions." The words struck like a cold blade. "Presentation," she echoed numbly. "You know how these events work." He gestured subtly toward the crowd. "People watch. People judge. They measure us even when they pretend they don't. We maintain composure always." Jessica swallowed. "Aaron, are we okay?" "That depends on what version of you shows up tonight." Her chest tightened. Before she could respond, he was swept away by a cluster of guests eager for small talk and smiles. Jessica stood in place, feeling the room tilt slightly under her feet. Meanwhile, across the city, Ethan stared at his closet for a long, unmoving minute. His phone lay on the dresser, screen dark, notifications cleared. He hadn't replied to Jessica. He hadn't responded to Elaine. He should have felt free. He didn't. Finally, with a slow exhale, he chose a classic black suit, clean lines, nothing flashy, understated confidence. He looked at himself in the mirror. He didn't see the man Jessica abandoned. He saw the man who survived it. As he stepped outside, Brooklyn's air felt sharp and bracing. He took the subway, not a car habit, simplicity, grounding. He rode in silence all the way to Midtown, where the hotel stood like a shining monument to wealth and expectation. He entered the lobby quietly. No grand entrance, no dramatic reveal, just presence. Still, heads turned. People in designer suits looked up with curiosity, subtle, but enough to ripple through the room. Not because they recognized him, but because he carried an aura they weren't expecting. composure, control, a confidence not purchased but earned. He felt none of it, but they did. Then Jessica saw him. Her breath caught. She stood across the room, silver dress gleaming, eyes wide, not with longing, not quite with regret, but with something raw, something she had been trying to suppress since their meeting at the cafe. Ethan paused at the threshold of the ballroom. For a moment, everything else dimmed. The chatter, the clinking glasses, the curated laughter. Just the two of them, people shaped by choices neither fully understood. Jessica approached him slowly. "Ethan," she whispered, "you came." "I wasn't sure until a few minutes ago," he said. Her eyes glimmered with emotion, confusion, relief, fear. "Thank you." He nodded once. "I'm not here to cause trouble." "I know." They stood in silence, past and present colliding with uncomfortable precision. Then Aaron appeared. He reached them with a calm smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Ethan," he said, extending a hand. "Jessica's told me a lot about you." Ethan shook his hand without hesitation. "I doubt she told you much that matters." Aaron's smile tightened. "Maybe not." Jessica stepped back slightly, tension radiating off her. But before the conversation could deepen, Elaine suddenly arrived beside them. "Ethan," she breathed, eyes softening with unmistakable warmth. "You look well." "You too," he said politely. Elaine turned to Aaron and Jessica. "Why don't you three get some fresh air? The balcony is quieter." Her tone wasn't suggestion, it was command. And just like that, Ethan found himself walking with the couple across the ballroom toward the balcony doors, three lives knotted by old mistakes and new fears. The balcony overlooked the city, sprawling lights, endless depth. Wind whispered across the concrete. Jessica stood between them, her pulse visible at her throat. Aaron spoke first. "So," he said lightly, "tell me, Ethan, what brings you here tonight?" Ethan held his gaze without flinching. "Respect, nothing else." "For whom?" Aaron asked. "For myself." Jessica's breath hitched. Aaron's eyes narrowed a fraction. Lightning flashed somewhere beyond the skyline, silent but bright. Inside the ballroom, a presentation began, voices muffled through the glass. Out on the balcony, tension thickened. Jessica finally spoke. "Aaron, Ethan isn't—" Aaron raised a hand. "No, let him speak." Ethan's voice was calm. "I didn't come here to disrupt anything. I didn't come here to win back anything. I came because some doors are easier to close in person." Jessica's eyes glistened. Aaron studied him, calculating. "You don't seem like a man struggling with the past." "I'm not," Ethan replied, "but she is." The words sliced clean through the air. Jessica inhaled sharply. Aaron's jaw flexed barely, but enough. Wind pressed against them as if listening. Ethan stepped back. "I should go." But before he could turn, the balcony doors swung open. A hotel staff member rushed out, breathless. "Ms. Hale, there's a situation inside. You need to come. Now." Jessica's stomach dropped. "What kind of situation?" The staffer hesitated. "Someone leaked a photo online." Ethan felt the air shift. Aaron stiffened. "What photo?" The staffer swallowed hard. "The one of you meeting your ex-husband." Jessica's world tilted. Inside the ballroom, dozens of phones were already lighting up. The storm had officially broken public, loud, unavoidable. And no one, not Ethan, not Jessica, not Aaron, was prepared for how quickly everything would unravel. The ballroom felt different the second Jessica stepped back inside. The hum of polite conversation had fractured into sharp, splintered whispers. Guests huddled in small circles, phones glowing in their hands like tiny spotlights of judgment. A wall of eyes turned toward her. Confusion, curiosity, hunger. Jessica's pulse hammered. She pushed through the crowd. Aaron close behind, Ethan trailing at a distance he felt obligated to keep. A groomsman hurried toward them, face flushed with panic. "Jess, look at this!" He thrust his phone into her hands. There it was, the photo, the same one Tyler had taken from across the street. Only now it wasn't confined to a private message. It was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, a gossip account specializing in high-profile New York weddings. The caption was brutal in its simplicity. Bride to be spotted having emotional meetup with ex-husband hours before rehearsal dinner. Trouble in paradise? The post had already amassed thousands of views, dozens of comments, speculation spreading like wildfire. Jessica's chest tightened until her breath came thin. "This is bad," someone whispered behind her. "Who's the guy?" "That's her ex-husband." "On the eve of the wedding? Damn. I heard he's doing well now, like really well. Maybe she regrets leaving him." Each comment hit like a slap. Aaron's face was unreadable marble. He gently took the phone from Jessica, stared at the post, and then looked at her. "Is this how you wanted to be introduced to the world as my wife?" he asked quietly. "Aaron, no, it's not. You promised transparency," he said. "This? This is the opposite." She started shaking. "Aaron, please. It wasn't like that. I just needed closure." "Then why does it look like longing?" The voice didn't come from Aaron. It came from Elaine. She stood near them, her expression etched in controlled disappointment. Not anger, worse. The kind of disappointment that carried a lifetime of expectations. "Mother," Elaine's gaze shifted to Ethan. "And you. You should have known better than to meet her in public." Ethan didn't flinch. "I'm not responsible for the photo." "No," Elaine said, "but you're responsible for being in it." Jessica winced. The room seemed to press inward, every chandelier crystal catching the tension like light. Aaron stepped closer to his bride-to-be. "We need to talk, alone." He led her toward a side hallway. Jessica looked back once at Ethan in instinct, a reflex but quickly tore her gaze away. The door closed behind the couple. Ethan remained standing where he was, feeling the stares cling to him like static. He could hear fragments of whispers. "Is that really him? He looks nothing like the stories. Honestly, he looks better than the groom." No wonder she made him look at him. He hated every word of it. He hadn't come here for spectacle, for drama, for any of this. He had come in silence, intending to leave in silence, hoping to put ghosts to rest. Instead, he had walked into a battlefield he never wanted to return to. A hand touched his arm. It was Clara. Except Clara wasn't supposed to be here. He blinked. "What are you doing?" "I saw the post," she said. "And I knew you'd be in the middle of it." Her coat dripped rain onto the polished floor. She must have rushed the entire way. He exhaled shakily. "This is worse than I thought." Clara glanced around at the murmuring crowd. "They're treating it like entertainment, like your life is a subplot in their evening." "It feels like that." Clara stepped in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Ethan, you don't deserve this." His jaw clenched. "Neither does she." Clara's eyes flickered. "Maybe not, but she created this pattern. And now you're tangled in it again." He didn't respond, because a part of him knew she was right. In the hallway, Jessica stood with her back pressed to the wall, fingers trembling. Aaron kept walking, pacing like a man trying to outrun his own thoughts. "You should have told me," he said finally. "I was going to—" "When?" he snapped. "When the tabloids dug up dirt? When the speculation reached my investors? When our wedding became a reality show?" She swallowed hard. "I didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. "But you didn't do anything right either," Aaron said. "You hid something. You let him walk back into your life just long enough to make us look ridiculous." "Aaron, please." Do you still have feelings for him? The question hit her like a blow. No, she said immediately, but her voice trembled. Aaron's eyes sharpened. You hesitate. It's not that, she whispered. I don't love him. I just never stopped wondering if I was cruel, if I ruined something I can't fix. And now, Aaron asked, do you regret us? Shock sliced through her. No, I regret me, the person I was. Aaron studied her, searching for truth behind her trembling. Jessica, he said slowly, I don't want a marriage built on uncertainty. I don't want a wife who looks at another man and thinks of alternate lives. I don't, she cried, but her tears said otherwise. He exhaled deeply. We're going back inside, he said. We will finish tonight with dignity. And tomorrow, we decide if this wedding still happens. Her blood ran cold. The thought of losing him, losing the life she had built, terrified her. But the thought that he might never trust her again terrified her more. Back in the ballroom, Ethan stood beside Clara, ready to leave, when Elaine approached him once more. Her voice was lower, softer, stripped of pretense. Ethan, I didn't mean to blame you. He shook his head. It doesn't matter. It does, Elaine insisted. You didn't cause this. Jessica's past is hers to manage, not yours to carry. He didn't know how to respond. She added quietly, but maybe I shouldn't have asked you to come. Ethan exhaled. Why did you? Elaine hesitated. Then, because she never healed from you, she said, and I needed to know whether she still could. He stared at her, stunned. That isn't fair to anyone. No, she agreed, but truth rarely is. Before he could reply, the ballroom doors opened again. Jessica and Aaron re-entered, together, composed, but changed, and every eye turned toward them. Jessica's glance swept the room, pausing for half a heartbeat on Ethan before sliding away, as if the sight burned. Aaron signaled for silence. His voice carried, We will not be discussing rumors or photos tonight. This event is about family, unity, and the steps ahead of us. But Jessica felt the crack in his words. He hadn't said our future. He had said the steps ahead. Her hands shook. Her heart pounded. Her world teetered. And then, her eyes locked with Ethan's again. For one fragile second, neither looked away. Everyone noticed, and in that moment, a quiet realization settled over the room like fog. This wedding, it was no longer guaranteed, not by love, not by certainty, not by force. Everything now hinged on the next choice made, and none of them knew whose choice it would be. Thunder rolled across the skyline long after the rehearsal dinner ended, echoing through Manhattan like a warning that no one had the courage to voice. Jessica stood alone on the penthouse balcony, barefoot, shivering despite the warm night. Below her, the city flickered, restless and alive, so unlike the stillness choking her chest. The rehearsal had ended hours ago, but her pulse still hadn't slowed. She felt watched, judged, exposed. And worst of all, she felt unfinished. Behind her, the sliding door opened. Aaron stepped out, tie removed, expression carved from exhaustion rather than anger. "We need to talk," he said. Jessica turned slowly. "I know." He leaned against the railing opposite her. The space between them felt like a canyon. "I've been thinking," he said. "About us. About tomorrow." Jessica's stomach tightened. She wrapped her arms around herself as if to prevent the world from cracking open. "I love you," Aaron continued. "I wouldn't have proposed if I didn't. But love without trust..." He shook his head. "It collapses." Her throat tightened. "You can trust me." "Can I?" Aaron asked softly. "Because I don't think the issue is what you feel about me. It's what you still feel about him." That's not fair, she whispered. It's not about fairness. It's about truth. Jessica pressed her palms against her face. I don't love Ethan. That's not what you're struggling with, Aaron replied gently. You're struggling with the version of yourself you were with him, and whether you threw away something good. She froze. Because he was right, and she hated him for being right. Aaron moved closer. Jess, if you're marrying me so you can erase your past, it will break us. And if you're marrying me because you're afraid of admitting regret, that will break us too. Her breath faltered. What do you want from me? Honesty about what you truly want. Jessica dragged a trembling breath into her lungs. I want a life with you. Then prove you're choosing me for the right reasons, not because the alternative scares you. His words settled heavily between them, no threat, no anger, just gravity. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, soft, conflicted, uncertain. Tomorrow morning, he said, if you still want this wedding, I'll be at the altar. And if I don't, Jessica whispered, then you won't see me there. He walked inside, closing the door behind him. Jessica remained on the balcony until the night swallowed her whole. Across the river, Ethan sat in his dimly lit apartment, unable to focus on anything the city, the documents spread across his table, the soft hum of traffic drifting through the window. Clara had stayed after the rehearsal, sensing he wasn't okay, but she'd left quietly an hour ago, her hand lingering on his shoulder before she said goodnight. Now Ethan felt the weight of silence pressing against him. A quiet knock broke it. He frowned. It was nearly midnight. When he opened the door, he was stunned. Jessica stood in the hallway, rain-damp hair clinging to her face, makeup smudged, dress clinging to her as if she'd walked through fog. Jess? He whispered. Her voice cracked. I didn't know where else to go. He stepped aside slowly, letting her in. She didn't sit. She simply stood in the center of his living room, arms wrapped around herself. I needed to ask you something, she said, and I need the truth. Ethan kept a careful distance. What is it? Jessica's eyes shimmered fear, guilt, longing, loss. It was all tangled into something raw. When we were together, she said, did you really love me? The question hung in the air, trembling like her voice. Ethan's jaw tightened. Yes, you know I did. And did I ever make you happy? She whispered. You did, he said softly, before everything changed. Jessica pressed a shaking hand to her mouth. I'm such a terrible person. No, Ethan said. You were hurting, and you hurt me because you didn't know how else to survive your own expectations. Her shoulders collapsed as though someone had cut the strings holding her upright. I'm getting married in less than 12 hours, she said, and all I can think about is whether I destroyed something I'll never find again. Ethan felt something deep inside him sink. Jess, why are you here? She met his eyes with a desperation that was both familiar and foreign. I need to know, she said, if walking away from you was the biggest mistake of my life. Silence swallowed the room. Ethan inhaled slowly. Jessica? She stepped forward just one step, but close enough for him to smell the storm on her skin. Tell me, she whispered, if I asked you to, would you want me back? The question cut through him clean, deep, unexpected. Ethan's eyes closed. He remembered the night she cried in his arms, the days she belittled him, the dreams they once planned, the cruel words that shattered him, the years he rebuilt himself from the rubble she left behind. He opened his eyes. No, he said quietly. Jessica froze. Not because I don't care about you, Ethan continued. Not because I've forgotten, but because going back would destroy us both. We're not those people anymore. We can't be. Her breath broke. You were my first real love, Ethan said, but not every love is meant to survive. Tears spilled down her cheeks, helpless, silent. She turned away, one hand pressed to the wall to steady herself. I don't know who I am without you, she whispered. You're someone who needs to figure that out, Ethan replied gently, but not through me, and not through a marriage built on fear. Jessica wiped her face, breathing hard. I don't know if I can marry him, she said. Then don't, Ethan answered. She looked at him, really looked at him, seeing the man he had become, steady and sure. I'm sorry, she whispered, for everything. I know, he said. She stepped closer for a moment, as if tempted to hug him, then stopped. That's all I needed, she said. She left quietly. Ethan didn't try to stop her. Morning arrived gray and hesitant. At the church, guests whispered as they filled the pews. Rumors still crackled online, speculation swirling. Aaron stood at the altar calm, groomed, waiting. Jessica did not appear. Minutes passed, then 15, then 20. The wedding planner whispered urgently into Aaron's ear. He closed his eyes. Across the city, Jessica walked alone through Central Park, heels dangling from her fingers, dress wrinkled, makeup worn off. But for the first time in years, her expression unmasked. She wasn't choosing Ethan. She wasn't choosing Aaron. She was choosing herself. And somewhere in Brooklyn, Ethan sat on his couch, exhaling slowly, the weight on his chest finally lifting. Their lives had collided for the last time. Not with fireworks, not with revenge, but with clarity. And in that clarity, all three finally understood. Some endings aren't punishments. Some endings are releases. Some endings are the first honest breath in years.